You know, it's a story that sounds almost like a fairy tale. A nation goes from being one of the poorest in its region to literally the richest on the planet, all thanks to what seems like a single stroke of luck. But what happens after the fairy tale ending? What if that incredible wealth creates its own set of problems, ones that are much harder to see? Well, that is the paradox of Norway's plenty.
And this really is the central question, isn't it? Because to understand where Norway is today, you've got to grasp the sheer improbable scale of its transformation. I mean, this wasn't some slow and steady climb. This was a sudden, dramatic reversal of fortune that changed absolutely everything.
So let's start at the beginning. Our story really starts with expectations at rock bottom. For most of its history, Norway was defined by what it didn't have. But back in the late 1960s, that was all about to change, even if pretty much nobody believed it at the time.
And what's just staggering here is the speed. I mean, just look at this timeline. In 1969, Norway is the undisputed economic underdog of Scandinavia. Then, oil is discovered, and its trajectory just rockets upward. In a little over 50 years, they completely flipped the script to become a global economic powerhouse.
But here's the crazy part. This discovery was so far from a sure thing. It almost didn't happen. Imagine the scene. It's 1969. Over 200 exploratory wells have been drilled, and they've all come up empty. The American company, Phillips Petroleum, is ready to just pack up and go home, totally convinced there's nothing out there. But the Norwegian government points to the contract. You're obligated, they said, to drill just one more hole. It was basically a final, reluctant attempt.
And wouldn't you know it, that one last-ditch effort hit the jackpot. When the geologist, Max Melly, saw the telltale signs of oil from that final drill site, he knew this was different. He later said, "I thought we had found a gold mine," and he was right. That one single hole had tapped into the Ekofisk oil field, one of the largest in the entire world, and it changed Norway's destiny forever.
Okay, so striking oil is one thing. Plenty of nations have done that, right? And many of them have fallen victim to the infamous resource curse. You know, corruption, inflation, and just squandered wealth. Norway's true genius was in what it did next. It created one of the most disciplined financial systems on Earth to manage this incredible windfall.
So just how big of a player is Norway in the global energy game? Well, if you look at the raw export numbers, they're significant, but maybe not dominant. 8th in oil exports, 4th in gas. That's impressive for sure, but these numbers alone don't really explain their staggering wealth. But this is where you see the real story. When you adjust for Norway's tiny population, just over 5 million people, the picture becomes crystal clear. They are second in the world for both oil and gas exports per person. For every single citizen, the value of those exports is just immense. That's the secret sauce.
And here's the playbook for how they managed it. It's brilliant. First, the state collects all the revenue. Then, they tax oil companies at an astonishing 72% rate. Every single cent of that money then flows directly into a massive sovereign wealth fund. And here's the crucial part. The government can't just spend it all. They're only allowed to withdraw the expected annual return, which is about 3%, making sure the main fund stays intact for generations to come. And the result of all that discipline? A fund that's valued at nearly $2 trillion US. Let that number sink in for a second. It is, by a huge margin, the largest state-run investment fund in the world. It's almost double the size of the funds held by huge players like Saudi Arabia or Kuwait. So what does a number that big actually mean for the average person? Well, it breaks down to about $356,000 for every single man, woman, and child in the country. It's like a national savings account of almost unimaginable scale. But like any good story, there's a twist. This incredible success, this safety net of what feels like infinite money, has created a new, much less obvious problem, a national sense of complacency that might just be threatening Norway's long-term future.
And this chart really gets to the heart of the issue. A staggering 61% of Norway's total exports come from one thing: oil and gas. There's been very little real effort to diversify the economy. I mean, after fossil fuels, the next biggest export is fish. It's just 9%. The entire economy is overwhelmingly dependent on a single industry. You see this lack of new blood in the corporate world too. Think about this for a second, because it's a wild fact. The average age of the 10 biggest companies in Norway is 170 years old. In an era of booming tech giants and startups, Norway just isn't creating new, world-leading industries. And then you get to education, and this is where things get really weird. Norway spends more money per student than any other developed country on Earth, a massive $20,000 a year. But the results, their students score below average in math and science and just average in reading. All that investment, it isn't producing top-tier results.
And that trend, well, it continues when you look at innovation. Norway invests only about 1.5% of its GDP in research and development. Now, compare that to its Scandinavian neighbors, Sweden and Finland. They're investing nearly double that. Norway is falling behind in building an economy based on ideas instead of resources.
And this complacency isn't some abstract economic theory, it's creating huge problems at home. With very few new industries to invest in and high taxes on nearly everything except for selling your main home, where does all that money go? Into housing. And this has fueled a massive bubble, pushing household debt to over 200% of income, the highest in the entire world.
So what's the big takeaway here? The crucial point is that Norway's model, while incredibly successful for them, was built on a foundation of pure, dumb luck. And as the world starts to change, relying on that luck becomes an increasingly dangerous game to play. There's this fantastic analogy in the source material that just nails it. Politicians all over the world love to point to Norway as a model to copy. But that's like telling your 5'5" cousin that he should just be more like LeBron James in the paint. Norway's success came from a unique set of circumstances that simply can't be replicated.
And you might be thinking, well, maybe their luck will just strike again, right? And crazily enough, it almost did. Norway recently discovered what might be the world's largest reserve of phosphate, a key material for things like batteries and fertilizer. But this time is different. Only a tiny fraction is currently accessible, and unlike the oil boom, there's now huge political and environmental opposition to new mining. The easy path isn't a guarantee anymore.
And all of this leaves us with one final critical question. Norway won the geological lottery. They managed the prize with incredible discipline, no doubt about it. But they never truly had to build a diverse, competitive, modern economy from the ground up. So as the world moves beyond fossil fuels, the real test for Norway begins right now. Can a nation that has always been lucky finally learn how to make its own?